Hey guys, it's Mr. C here, and we're going to do the last of our guided reading books here from the Read at Home series. This is level 5C, and it's called The Secret of the Sands. So once again, we're going to go through this book 4 times. We'll do a picture walk. I'll do a read aloud so you can hear what the story sounds like and how it relates to the pictures we talked about. And then we'll give you a chance to do an echo read and finally an independent read. All right, let's get started. So Read at Home level 5C, The Secret of the Sands. We're going to do this as a picture walk only. Just look at the pictures, talk about what you see in the pictures, what's happening in the pictures, get an idea for the story through the pictures. So, who are all these people? What are they looking at? What's going on in this picture? What's happening over here? What's appeared? What's happening? Looking at this big double picture, where are they? What else is in the picture? What's happening over here in this picture? What are they doing? Now where are they? Take a look at this large double picture. What is this person holding? What are they looking at? What might happen next? What are they riding on? Where are they going? What are they looking for? What's happening here? Where do you think they might be? What do you think they're looking for? Remember, you can pause this video to spend longer on any picture you need to. What's Floppy doing? Where have they gone inside of? What could they be looking for? What's Floppy doing? What's happened now? Where are they? What did they find? What's happening now? Who are these guys? What are they doing? What happens now? How did that happen? Why do they look happy with Floppy? What is Floppy getting? What's she holding? Where are they now? What are they looking at? Okay, we did a good job with the picture walk. Now we're going to go through the book a second time. This is going to be a read aloud. I've got my trusty yellow highlighter as I read the story. Let's see if we can find out what is the same in the story with the words as was in the pictures and what we thought was going on. All right, so here's the title. The Secret of the Sands. The children were playing on the computer. They were playing Chip's new game, Secret of the Sands. Suddenly, the magic key began to glow. "Look at the key," cried Biff. "It's time for an adventure." Floppy growled. He didn't want to go on an adventure, but the magic was starting to work. The magic took the children into a desert. They saw a boy riding a camel across the hot sands. The boy rode up to them. "My name is Ali," he said. "You must come to my tent. You can't stay out in this hot sun." Ali helped the children climb onto the camels. Floppy sat with Kipper. "This camel is too bumpy for me," thought Floppy. Ali took the children to his tent. He gave them some cooler clothes. Then he showed them a map. "I'm going to the village on this map," said Ali. "Nobody lives there now, but long ago my father hid some treasure there. He called it the Secret of the Sands." "Secret of the Sands? That's the same name as my game," cried Chip. "Can we help you find the treasure?" "Oh yes, I'd like you to help," said Ali. "Come on, let's go." They rode through deep, rocky valleys and up steep, sandy hills. At last they came to the village. There was sand everywhere. It had blown into the empty rooms and drifted over the walls. "There must have been a sandstorm," said Ali. "It all looks different from the map. I don't know where to look." Wilf pointed to an old tower. "That's the tower on the map," he said. "We must be very near the treasure. Let's look here." They looked into the shadowy rooms and poked the sand with sticks. "I'll help too," thought Floppy, and he dug some deep holes. Suddenly, Floppy disappeared. "Help!" shouted Biff. "Floppy has fallen down a hole. We must rescue him." They climbed down into a hidden room. Wilma shone her torch around, and something glittered in the light. It was a treasure chest. The chest was full of glittering gold and sparkling jewels. "The Secret of the Sands," said Ali. "How beautiful." The children put the chest onto Ali's camel. Suddenly they heard a noise. It grew louder and louder. Vroom! Two men on a motorbike came speeding towards them. "They're desert robbers," cried Ali. "They're after the treasure." The children raced away, but the robbers came closer and closer. "They're going to catch us," cried Biff. "What can we do?" Crash! Suddenly there was a loud crash. "Floppy has saved us," shouted Kipper. "The robbers have fallen into one of his holes. They'll never get us now." They got back safely, and Ali gave Floppy a golden camel. "Thank you for saving us," he said. The magic key began to glow. "It's time for us to go," said Biff. The magic took the children home. "What an adventure," said Chip. "What glittering gold," said Wilma. "What big bumpy camels," thought Floppy. All right, let's think about the story and answer these questions. And again, you can pause the video to have more time to answer them. First question says, why do you think the book is called The Secret of the Sands? Why didn't Floppy like the adventure? How did Floppy save the children? And what sort of treasure would you like to find? All right, that's great. We're about to go through the book for the third time. This is going to be an echo read. Remember, Mr. C reads first, and then it's your turn. Let's start with the title. The Secret of the Sands. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. The children were playing on the computer. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. They were playing Chip's new game, Secret of the Sands. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Suddenly, the magic key began to glow. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Look at the key, cried Biff. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. It's time for an adventure. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Floppy growled. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. He didn't want an adventure, but the magic was starting to work. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. The magic took the children into a desert. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. They saw a boy riding a camel across the hot sands. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. The boy rode up to them. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. My name is Ali, he said. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. You must come to my tent. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. You can't stay out in this hot sun. Your turn. Remember, pause the page, pause the video if you need to. Try again if you have to. Ali helped the children climb onto the camels. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Floppy sat with Kipper. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. This camel is too bumpy for me, thought Floppy. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Ali took the children to his tent. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. He gave them some cooler clothes. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Then he showed them a map. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. I'm going to the village on this map, said Ali. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Nobody lives there now, but long ago my father hid some treasure there. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. He called it the secret of the sands. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Secret of the sands? Your turn. Mr. C's turn. That's the same name as my game, cried Chip. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Can we help you to find the treasure? Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Oh, yes. I'd like you to help, said Ali. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Come on, let's go. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. They rode through deep, rocky valleys and up steep, sandy hills. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. At last they came to the village. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. There was sand everywhere. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. It had blown into the empty rooms and drifted over the walls. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. There must have been a sandstorm, said Ali. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. It all looks different from the map. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. I don't know where to look. Your turn. Remember, pause the video, try again. So eventually, after many tries, you can read at the same speed my finger's pointing to. Mr. C's turn. Wilf pointed to an old tower. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. That's the tower on the map, he said. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. We must be very near the treasure. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Let's look here. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. They looked into the shadowy rooms and poked the sand with sticks. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. I'll help too, thought Floppy, and he dug some deep holes. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Suddenly, Floppy disappeared. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Help! Shouted Biff. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Floppy has fallen down a hole. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. We must rescue him. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. They climbed down into a hidden room. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Wilma shone her torch around and something glittered in the light. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. It was a treasure chest. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. The chest was full of glittering gold and sparkling jewels. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. The secret of the sands, said Ollie. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. How beautiful. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. The children put the chest onto Ali's camel. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Suddenly, they heard a noise. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. It grew louder and louder. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Two men on a motorbike came speeding towards them. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. They're desert robbers, cried Ali. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. They're after the treasure. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. The children raced away, but the robbers came closer and closer. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. They're going to catch us, cried Biff. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. What can we do? Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Suddenly there was a loud crash. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Floppy has saved us, shouted Kipper. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. The robbers have fallen into one of his holes. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. They'll never get us now. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. They got back safely, and Ali gave Floppy a golden camel. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Thank you for saving us, he said. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. The magic key began to glow. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. It's time for us to go, said Biff. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. The magic took the children home. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. What an adventure, said Chip. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. What glittering gold, said Wilma. Your turn. And Mr. C's turn. What big, bumpy camels, thought Floppy. And your turn. Nice job echo reading. Okay, last time through the book. This time it's an independent read. I will point to the words. You try to read at the same speed my finger is pointing. Remember, you can always rewind the video, pause the video, and you should practice this book over and over and over again. It might take 10 or 12 times through this book before you can read it in what we call a mastered level. To master this book, you have to be able to read it right from page 1 to the last page, no mistakes, no need for help, and your voice is reading at the same speed you would be talking. All right, let's get started with the title. Well done. Remember, practice that story over and over and over again. Might take you 10 to 12 times to get through it before you can read it perfectly. Great job.